we have a reasonably long line of folks that have volunteered to speak and ask or a question or make a comment. And I also want to recognize and also inform folks. Many Afghans will not be aware, but we have an M&A from the Punjab, from PMLN. My sister, Dr. Shezra Karal, has been in the room, I think, for the entire duration of the conversation. We have an M&A from Peshawar. His name is Sher Ali Arbab. He's part of the PTI. I've seen him in and out, but I know that he spent some time here. I mentioned this because I didn't ask either of these folks specifically to come in. And I want Afghan sisters and brothers to understand that there is a wide and diverse audience of Pakistanis that are really desperate to understand the issues and help forge a direction in Pakistan that is different from the past. No more blood. When the blood of an Afghan flows, it is not long after that the blood of a Pakistani will also flow. This is a history lesson that I believe the state and society have learned. They've learned it hard, and the only way to keep it learned is by ensuring and sustaining a conversation. So I'm really grateful to Sami, to Omar, to Aisha, to Janan, and to everybody in the room. Now, I'm going to start basically inviting a bunch of folks, and I will speak the order. I'll lay out the order in which I'd like folks to speak. I really would request no more than 30 to 40 seconds for each speaker so that we can get a lot of folks in, and then we can also have each of the speakers provide either responses or concluding remarks, because we do want to end we were planning on ending at 10:30. It's now 10:47. I think if we can end by 11:15, it'll be a great achievement. So I'm going to ask Kochai Levanai to speak first.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Michelle, for giving me the opportunity to speak. I would mention I'm basically from South Waziristan, and I would like to ask my question that there's a lot of speculation, hopes from Pakistan. But what I see and grown in my area, where I can see the existence of Taliban, the regrouping of Haqqani network, their training camps are there, and Pakistani military.
You want to add somebody else? Engineer Farooq, next.
Yes, actually, my question is related to that. Is this an illusion that the Americans are living? I feel sometimes that they're with Afghanistan. Pakistan and Afghanistan have so much in common that we don't need to be enemies and we don't need to be attacking each other in any way. And we have learned our lessons in the last 30 years. How do you think we can capitalize on our lessons that in the last 30 years and take it forward from here?
I love that question, Farooq. Thanks for sharing that. I'm removing you from the speakers, and I'm going to go to Adil Najam, please.
Thank you all. This is very enlightening. I have a comment, partly reacting to something that Adam had said. We haven't spoken much about the U.S. role in this, except as an observer. The fact of the matter, empirically, and essentially saying to the parties, just fight it out. And I think that sort of rather harsh reality needs to be understood, at least in the region, if not in Washington. If the argument, and I'll end with this, if the argument is that I think, if I heard Adam right, that if there is civil war in Afghanistan, then the US cannot have a relationship with Pakistan. And it sounds a little comical. Pakistan is a country that
will respond.
Yeah, can I just 2 minutes?
Yeah, go ahead.
First of all, I mean, our friend Janan is a female name, and Arabic is Janan. So you have to be careful with Jinan and Janan. So he's Janan Musazai. I think, first of all, what really Pakistan want about Afghanistan in especially last 35 years, I think it is too late for Pakistan to deliver very valuable contribution on Taliban. I believe, I'm living around infiltration like what is happening today. So I think the Pakistan fear that's and what is in their strategic depth, there either should be a Taliban type or Mujahideen type regime that could cover their interest, or either should be Afghanistan destabilized, because they believe, or this, and I think some of the key elements, the control the Afghan policy, that a strong Afghanistan will create trouble. And the second, I think, as the forced withdrawal is person. But now I think the American believe that's okay. From now up to 9/11 this year, the American withdrawal timetable date, okay, try and tell Taliban to become part of the solution or political settlement, because you know their language, you know the Taliban DNA. I think after that, American believe in worst scenario case, in case the Taliban is taking over. So again, the Pakistan will be very important for Americans. And of course, the American is not telling the Pakistan that to take military action as Taliban, kick out Taliban from Pakistan, because that might be more problematic for everyone, especially at least American and even Europeans believe there should be someone has control on Taliban. And if we lost totally the Taliban contacts, then the Taliban might be sitting with Iranian. Then no one can even bother the door of Iranian to advise the Taliban. So do you think if something happened, just in case of the collapse of the regime in Taliban takeover, then again the Pakistan is getting an important role, because then there will be like, okay, now whatsoever has happened, now the Taliban is take over. So now the Pakistan task is to fix and rehabilitate the Taliban to behave a little bit normal, if not completely normal. So I think, and the Pakistan wouldn't mind such a taking such a responsibility and task. So that's something. And one other thing I would say that I think Adam said that Pakistan cannot be blamed for the failure in Afghanistan. I am agreed, but at the same time, in Afghanistan, everyone believe in everyone blame.
Forces withdrawal was announced, the Taliban have been buying and have been equipping themselves by more weapon and trying to make themselves stronger militarily. So if things go as such for the Taliban, then we should expect their victory and imposing their viewpoint, especially, their viewpoint about women's right and women's human right and their situation, their condition after troops withdrawal on Afghan society and the politics. What's their role of regional countries, particularly Pakistan, which is so close to Afghanistan, in pushing for the peace negotiation, and how which can prevent definitely can prevent the Taliban for getting more stronger and equipping themselves, and how they can prevent strengthening the Taliban, like for creating another Islamic emirate after September 11, 2021. So how and what is the thing, or what is the role that the regional countries and or neighboring countries can do? If our speaker have already addressed that, please feel free to disregard my question, and if I missed that part, but if not, I would appreciate some insight.
Well, regardless, I think I will ask someone to address that. It's a great question, Nazila. Thank you, Khadija.
Thank you, Musharraf, for giving me the mic. And I have actually a couple of questions here and a comment as well. Just like one of the persons said that Afghanis are, or Afghan nation is disappointed in Pakistan. The thing is, disappointment comes with a lot of expectations. And I think some of the expectations, as Umar and Adam has said, from Pakistan are actually a bit too much, and they're unrealistic as well. Because the way I hear people speak is as if Pakistan is a superpower and it's completely independent and it's playing its role in Afghanistan, which is not true. Basically, Pakistan has been economically very, very dependent and is still dependent. We cannot brush that aside. The thing is, if I have a problem in my own home, how does my neighbor expect me to kind of independently assess the situation or help them all the time, for instance, when they look up to me? I would completely agree with Omar on that as well, that the vacuum at the moment, or for a very long time, that was created was because Afghans could not sit down and strengthen themselves within the country. Because if they did, they don't need Pakistan. They don't need completely. Okay, I do know that bilateral relationships with neighbors is brilliant, but they wouldn't need a babysitter, as Umar said that. So no US, no Pakistan. So the first thing is to be strong within the nation, so that you don't need anyone else to come and tell you or ask, or you don't have to tell people or expect anything from people. One more thing, I've not heard anyone ask the question. Basically, the lens is all at the moment on Pakistan, mostly. Adam did speak about the US, and Aisha did speak a little bit about the US as well. But I think the question here more should be asking the US, what did they come for and what did they achieve? And the rush actually has to, there has to be they owe an explanation bigger to the Afghan nation than Pakistan. Another thing, now that the
Khadija,
US is
just in the
leaving,
interest,
just one last, please, Musharraf. There is a presence of anti-Pakistan Indian elements there as well. Now, with India and Pakistan relationship is a very open relationship, which is, we're not friends as states, we are enemies. Now, where would Pakistan stand in presence of Indian elements within Afghanistan? What choice or what are the expectations of the Afghan nation from Pakistan while we have people who are anti-Pakistan there? How are the relationship going to get better, and how are things going to get better between Afghanistan and Pakistan? So these are a couple of questions, please.
thank you, Khadija. Important perspective. We had, I believe, Dawood was in line next. Dawood.
Thank you, Musharraf. 30 seconds, so I must be quick. We have changing situation from late 70s. Soviets situation led to jihad, jihad led to warlordism, warlordism led to Talibanization, Talibanization to 9/11 US entry in the field, I mean active entry, Neo-Taliban and the TTP. Now, when the war front is wrapping up from the United States point of view, I mean they are leaving the region, so the groups have multiplied, and apart from the Afghan Taliban, there is the TTP, there is ISKP, there is Al Qaeda, there is Baloch insurgency, there is IMU, and there is ETIM, Eastern Turkestan Islamic Movement. Every one of these is accused of having links with one of the regional countries. So in all this situation, when US is seeking for bases, there are also news, although Pakistani officials are rejecting these reports. Don't you, I mean the speakers, think that there is a new regional or proxy wars in all this situation? If all of you heard my question as a whole, my question is this not the making of a new regional or proxy war in the region? Thank you.
Hello, Musharraf. It's Hamad Sumno. The country itself gets stabilized, but the thing is, you see, that I think that if you're talking about the two main players in that, so Afghanistan is more or less being used as a proxy, don't you think so? Between Pakistan and Afghanistan at the same time, and India at the same time, because in some cases, what has happened that apparently, I'm saying apparently, that, for example, certain what do you call it? Certain what do you call it? Intersecurity agencies, yes, they've set up maybe different posts in Afghanistan as such to destabilize the country itself, yes, and then launch maybe attacks somewhere else, that sort of thing. And obviously, Pakistan tends to do that as well. Can't deny that in some ways. But the thing is, don't you think that the US needs to then basically play as a intermediary, like a parent would, for example, between if you had, let's say, sibling
not rivalry, but sibling disagreements, basically within the families, that sort of thing.
Sort of interferes in Afghanistan affairs, so obviously Afghans it creates expectation from Afghans, and it's also the same when Afghanistan interferes in Pakistani affairs, for example, supporting certain groups in Pakistan. So obviously Pakistanis then have expectations from Afghanistan. So we cannot just say, "Oh, you guys, why you always expect stuff from us?" That's not a very realistic perspective of this situation. And my question for the panel is: we all see that after U.S. withdrawal, the government in Afghanistan is pursuing its own agenda contrary to what Americans would like to achieve. Likewise, the Taliban have an office in Doha, and they are dealing with international community as a very significant entity. So these two Afghan sides both have shown that they are not entirely dependent on one side on Pakistan and on the other side on United States. So if we see that they have so much freedom on both sides, why do some of our panelists still persist on asking Pakistan to put pressure on Taliban, and at the same time they don't ask the same question from the government in Kabul or the United States, like why is the United States not putting any pressure on Kabul? Sorry for taking too much time.
Thank you, Sangar. Great question, and all of you should listen to Sangar Pekhar's podcast, The Afghan Eye. Sangar, I'll
I have a
give you
10-second
just
answer to that
accommodate you.
question.
Go ahead, shoot right away.
If there's
Adam.
time, because I might have to leave in a few moments. But if I understood the last part of Sangar's question, it's why does the U.S. not put pressure on the Afghan government? Is that correct? I think, and I think a lot of that had to do with the fact U.S. troops were in Afghanistan and the Afghan government was our partner. And this is what I mean by the clock is ticking on the continuation of aid. Maybe not in the next year or the next 2 years, but the clock is ticking. And so I think you are going to see some of that pressure. And let's always remember that, for the aid to continue to flow, Congress, elected by the U.S. people, has to continue to be able to defend that aid to the U.S. voters. And so it's not merely a decision by the Secretary of Defense or the President. So, I do think we're going to see that pressure increase on the Afghan state now that there's no longer U.S. boots on the ground. And we're going to see how that plays out. But that's why coming to a solution is so critical. I don't think we can measure this in years. I think the window of opportunity is in the next 2 years.
Thanks for the quick response, Adam. Aisha, I can still see you, and Adam, I realize you have to go soon. I think we might have lost Omar partly because we keep bringing in new speakers, so it's entirely possible for that reason. We're just gonna make this the last round, so I'll only add maybe 2 or 3 more that have been waiting in queue, but we already have a reasonably long queue here. We're gonna start with Saad Kiani, I believe, and then we'll go to Nasrat, and then we'll go to Munir. Those are the next 3 guys. I really, really hope you can make it 30 seconds or less. Jazakallah.
Thanks, Musharraf. So my question is mostly to us Pakistanis. Like, what is it that makes us such a soft target, and why is it so easy to scapegoat Pakistan for all the failures around us? If the Afghan government fails to deliver, if the NATO forces and the US has failed to deliver in like 20 years, why is it so easy to point fingers at Pakistan? What is it that we are doing wrong?
Great question. I know everybody in the room will have a version of an answer, but we'll hear Aisha and hopefully Janan and Adam respond to that. We'll move to Munir.
Hey, thanks for having me on. So 2 provocative questions. Hopefully people take it in the spirit of discussion. First one may be directed at Adam because he's maybe the only person who can speak to U.S. policy. After 20 years, why should CT be the primary goal in Afghanistan? Why not great power competition? Or said a different way, why isn't it optimal US policy that both Afghanistan and Pakistan and maybe even the wider region is somewhat unstable because it will cause other regional powers to have to spend blood and treasure? So that's one. The second one,
Yeah, we only get one at this stage,
okay,
brother. I
sure.
really apologize. Arash Yaqeen has been waiting. So Arash,
Thank you, Shreya. It is sad, actually, reality. Let's say, as an Afghan American, I'm saying that the US kind of have to make deal on behalf of Afghans, but definitely it's the blame to an Afghan government and capacity to not be a relying partner for Washington. Anyway, that's one part. Comment. My question is that how much is Adam, if he's still here, do you think making deal with Pakistan for the US is worrying about the terrorism in Afghanistan, and how much it has to do with bringing kind of Pakistan back from China on the American side? Thank you.
thank you. I'm going to ask Az and everyone else that I just added to mute their mics, just so that we can keep this flowing without much disruption. So we will. Arash has asked his question. I think Az, Tawheed NN had been waiting for a while, and Khalil Pashtun. So we'll go to Dr. Az and then we'll go to Khalil. Az.
Hello, guys. I'm putting it short. I hope everyone is fine. I've been listening for a while for the discussion, avoiding all repeated questions. I'm having a small question here. Is US and Pakistan preparing to export extremism to the Central Asia? Is that what Pakistan and US is working together for? Because since we are hearing with the New Year basis, that's rumoring through the newses and through repeatedly rejected by the Pakistan foreign prime minister. And the other thing is that I believe that the key of the peace neither is in the hand of Afghan government, and it couldn't be neither with the Taliban as well. So it's the world power, especially the US. I think they can fix up the things to what they're looking for. So
Okay, we got the question and the
yeah,
comment, Az. We're going to move
thank
to
you so
Khalil
much.
real quick. Thank you. You're welcome. Khalil,
Thank you, Musharraf, for giving me mic. I would like to ask a question with Adam. My question is from last 20 years. We have seen the caravans and the training camps for Taliban inside Pakistan in border regions. How US and NATO allies failed to pinpoint. Obviously, there will be a lot of intelligence reports and everything.
with everyone's permission, I'd like to
Yeah.
approach the
Why
wrapping
this
up
failed?
stage of this.
Thanks.
I could give a
Thank
10-second answer to those last two questions directed at me, and then free to hand it over to all the other speakers because I might have to drop off in a moment.
Yeah, go for it, Adam.
I think the short answer is that the reason CT remains a priority, or counterterrorism remains a priority, is because the political cost of a terrorist attack happening to the political cost in US domestic politics would be exponential. And so even if it's not, I'm one that believes climate change and many other issues are far bigger threats than the terrorism threat. But the political cost of another large terrorist attack happening, not just against U.S. targets inside the country, because Homeland Security probably can handle that. We have an architecture, much of which I disagree with, that exists to deal with attacks inside the U.S. borders. But the fact is, we saw what happened to a hotel in Mumbai. We see what can happen to consulates and embassies and travelers and tourists and potential soft targets. And so the risk of that and the domestic political blowback to a U.S. president is so high. The blowback, not the risk. The risk might be small, but the cost is incredibly high, and that alters the calculation in the minds of U.S. decision makers. And so CT remains a priority. Second, I actually think any CT cooperation with Pakistan is actually more about CT than it is about great power competition. Although I would say for Pakistan, it keeps it an invaluable partner to the United States, even if we can criticize that arrangement. And frankly, I don't think personally, I don't think CT should receive the amount of attention it does. But I'm explaining the psychology behind it that goes into these decisions. And then, I guess. Yeah, I guess that answers the questions that I remember.
Thanks for taking them on, Adam, and thanks for doing this and sticking on as long as you did. I think you offer a number of challenges to all of us to think more carefully about things. I'll be fine, and I won't mind at all, and I won't be angry if you drop off at some stage over the next few minutes. I had added Sakhavat Saab, Dr. Sakhavat, and Bilal Lakhani to the speakers. If you guys could take 15 seconds each to say a piece, just because I'd added you, and I wouldn't want you to leave disappointed. I deeply and sincerely apologize to those that we can't add. 15 seconds each to you, and then we'll just go final comments from Janan, from Umar Samad, from Aisha Khurram, and maybe Amber can give us a sense of a summary, although it'll be pretty tough to summarize this vast conversation. Sakhavat, and then Bilal, and then Janan, Umar, Aisha, and Amber.
Musharraf, thank you very much. The trouble that I see sitting here far away in US for living here for 50 years is that there is somewhat of a distorted perception in Pakistan and Afghanistan what US is doing. I think if you reword, like the judge will say to attorney, please rephrase your sentence. What United States has done is that they have made a decision, and that decision is let the chips fall wherever they may. They want to get out. They have been 20 years. They have lost 2,400 lives. They have spent $800 billion. And people don't understand in Pakistan that one life lost in the United States is like 1,000 lives lost. So that's too much. The second thing is that what you call peace is not peace. From United States point of view, it's a face-saving device. They don't care what happens. So really, we're talking about peace, but peace could only be obtained in two equal parties. And right now, Taliban thinks that there's a grab for the land, and they can grab as much as they can. And Ian Bremmer, on his tweet on 5/13, put a map of Afghanistan. So really, we must understand that Afghanistan is in for a surprise. Most likely, the U.S. embassy will be closed. Most likely, there will be war for another 2 years, and most likely, Pakistan will be making a
Doc, your way,
scapegoat that Pakistan
Doc,
cannot stop it. Thank you.
Doc, I apologize. Yeah, you were way over 15 seconds, and I know Bilal
Sorry
will
for
take
that.
full advantage, but no, it's fine. Go ahead, Bilal. Bilal Lakhani.
Ji Musharraf, thank you so much. There's a great American saying: if you break it, you buy it. I am just shocked by how little accountability there is in mainstream American discourse on what's happened, and I'm wondering if there's any way for Pakistan and Afghanistan to raise a political and reputational price for America for the damage that their lack of strategy in Afghanistan has caused. Because it's easy for the blame game, and there's plenty of blame to go around between Pakistan and Afghanistan as well.
It will also increase difficulties and suffering for the people of Pakistan and the entire region. So I'll just finish by reiterating my plea, and I relate this to Ambar's point earlier, that there isn't really an in-depth discussion of Pakistan's role in the peace process in Afghanistan. I think we need to give this time. If the military in Pakistan, the civilian leaders in Pakistan are serious about playing the role that Pakistan can play, we cannot be expecting Pakistan to fix everything or to deliver peace for Afghanistan, but it has an important role. And if they are sincere about doing that, it has to become a conversation in Pakistan. The parliament of Pakistan, the military, civil society have to give it time, and so that we can all engage in a conversation that's as fact based and as objective as possible. So I'll just end with that. But thank you for this, and congratulations, Musharraf, for bringing together such a wonderful cast of speakers and participants in this conversation. We need to do a lot more of these, and
Inshallah, that's entirely the intent, and I think all the credit goes to the speakers themselves and the participants. I mean, I've noticed, my old and dear friend Zubair Abbasi's been here throughout. Idris Zaman has stayed from the beginning. Iqbal Tiba has been here. Lots of people that I'm going to sort of not mention only out of sort of a concern for time, but grateful to each and every one that was in the room. It's such a fantastic, high quality set of comments and questions. And audience, and obviously the panel was phenomenal. Omar Samad, you really helped make it so. Some final thoughts, responses that you wanted to offer to questions that were raised, final comments. Omar Samad.
Thank you so much for this space and this time that you've given. It's very important for Afghans and people in the region, especially Pakistanis and others, including Indians, I hope, to have this kind of a discussion, not only at the political levels or diplomatic or military, but also track 2s and track 1.5 and all of that is very important. I just want to leave this discussion by saying that I am cautiously optimistic, whereas many others are very gloomy. Yes, there's a lot of reason to be gloomy, but I think that if as long as the window is open for a political settlement, we need to grasp the moment and we need to do everything possible to get over the hurdles. But first, we need to identify the hurdles. We need to know what's blocking the way toward not a perfect peace, what I call an imperfect peace. Afghanistan needs an imperfect peace, and the region needs an imperfect stability in Afghanistan. And we have models from the past that could work, but today is a different world. So in today's world and context, let's not forget the so-called Troika plus one is sort of has consensus over what should happen. That is very important. We should capitalize on that. There are Afghan people want peace. We should capitalize on that. It's not just the few individuals in Kabul who at the end of the day obviously do matter, but it's basically the Afghan population that matters most, and we shouldn't forget them. And we should do what is necessary to make sure that their aspirations come to fruition. But the point is that there's no silver bullet, and there's no miracle formula. It needs all stakeholders in order to reach a certain level.
We had asked if Adam would want to go, and Adam has had to leave. So
I'm back on, actually. I can go quickly if you want.
yeah, right before Aisha, go ahead, Adam.
What was just said. I mean, I don't think it's fair when American analysts say that the ANDSF is just going to crumble and the Afghan state is just going to fall apart. I don't think that's fair. I think there's resistance. So, what I really hope for is that I hope the Afghan government realizes the moments it's in and how critical its actions are. I hope Afghan leaders realize that. I hope they make the case through their actions that U.S. aid should continue. I hope the United States has the foresight not to enter the region of South Asia and Afghanistan and then leave and then re-enter and leave. I hope it understands the importance of staying involved diplomatically and economically, which has been a lesson that it hasn't always learned. I hope Pakistan realizes that it cannot decouple its future from the future of Afghanistan. They're both the people, the history, the culture, the geography in many ways, and the trajectory and the securities of Pakistan and Afghanistan are intertwined, like it or not. And so I hope everyone, all of these actors realize that, and I hope the Taliban ultimately realize that their battlefield victories will be short-lived if they don't seek a compromise that is inclusive of all Afghans. They will never have the legitimacy they crave working outside the system by force. If the Taliban truly want to have an impact on the future of Afghanistan that is in any way positive, they will have to meet their Afghan brethren in the middle. So those are my hopes, and I think these conversations are important. And I've tried to be blunt today because I think, folks inside governments don't have the ability to do that. But I think when you're outside of government, it's incumbent on you to be real about things and not to use euphemistic language and beat around the bush. So thank you for having me. I've learned from the other speakers and people who ask questions.
Thanks, Adam. I think you're always straightforward and you take bold positions, and I'm grateful that we did this and that you were a part of it. I also just want to quickly, since I've recognized so many other friends, dear friend Wendy Gilmore is also on the call and listen in the room rather. And listening intently. Aisha, this sets it up for you as our last speaker, and kind of a summary of your takeaways from the discussion. Any specific questions you wanted to address or answer or highlight even further? The floor is yours, Aisha Khurram.
Thank you very much, Musharraf, for this opportunity. It was a great discussion, but at the end, I have a very brief comment on what other speakers mentioned before. And at this moment, I want to highlight the fact that despite the time pressure and despite the urgency that the United States feel to withdraw as soon as possible, and right now that the United States is claiming that it has more important and urgent missions to do rather than deal with the non-ending forever war in Afghanistan, which does not bear fruit, it really belittles and undermines the sacrifices Afghan people make on daily basis. And let's not forget the role that the United States and Pakistan played in the history of this 4 decades long war that we have experienced, which led and perpetuated till this very moment. And I believe that considering the role that regional countries, especially Pakistan and the United States played and the war, and eventually right now they are also major stakeholders in our fight for peace, in our struggle for peace. I believe that those regional players and international players, they have important ability to influence positively or negatively the course of development and stability in Afghanistan, in both in long term and short term. So I'm very happy and I'm glad that we have these discussions because they provide an opportunity for people to people connections to get stronger and to galvanize the public opinion around alternatives that we can think about in case we face between the two evils, or maybe some of the scenarios that are not very much pleasant. So thank you very much for having us, and it was a great pleasure to be part of this discussion. Thank you.
No, thank you, as always, Aisha, for participating and for your leadership and the clarity that you bring to these conversations. With that, Amber, you've obviously had a chance to listen in throughout. Any sort of big takeaways or summarizing thoughts, things that we can go away and think about some more as we approach nearly 3 hours on this Twitter space today?
Thank you, Musharraf. It is incredible that this has gone on for nearly 3 hours, and I think it actually speaks to the hunger for dialogue and conversation on Afghanistan that is beyond, the nuts and bolts of the peace process, but also just moving forward. What can Pakistan and Afghanistan, as well as the US, can do to make this just a little bit easier? I think it's important that what Mr. Janan also said, that and I may have sort of missed it, but I think that the key here is that we're not looking at peace as the absence of war or as the opposite of war, but perhaps a peace that works for the Afghan people. And while again, as media, particularly in Pakistan, focuses on the nuts and bolts, whereas in Afghanistan there is a lived experience of the pain of war, and we nobody wants to see. Aisha has spoken so eloquently about her experience and her generation's experience of growing up in war, but also nobody wants to see the next generation of Afghans suffer the same kind of pain and difficulty that her generation has. So I think, just quick summaries, I think there are opportunities, as Umar Samad has also pointed out, in terms of a political settlement, that there are opportunities for commonalities, and we really need to sort of think beyond not just a political settlement, but also just engagement and understanding. Thank you. And I also like to just add that this kind of sort of opportunity for this kind of conversation was possible because, Tabadlab has also brought together so many people and so many incredible speakers and some great questions and a variety of views on this kind of informal platform.
Yeah, I think I would end with that, and more, less about the Bot Lab, but really about the quality that this medium, the Twitter Spaces medium, because there's no video, uh, and because it's on a phone, it's less formal. We deliberately timed these for sort of post dinner. Almost everyone that we've done, this is the fourth. We've done them late night or late-ish night post dinner. So there's a lot of informality. I think that people are incredibly kind and polite when they, when even if they have anonymous Twitter identities. Almost it's extremely rare that there'll be any kind of abuse or any kind of harsh language. There were tough questions. Not all of them were answered. And I know there were speakers who wanted to speak and friends who wanted to ask questions, and we weren't able to get to everyone, for which I apologize. But I really cannot say enough words about the audience. Obviously, the speakers know how grateful we all are to them. I think especially Sami Yousafzai and Janan Musazai, who were dragged into this and so graciously and gracefully added to the conversation and to our understanding of the situation. I also don't think we answered a lot of big questions, but these are really big challenges. And ultimately, I think, as Umber said, it's really about creating the space to just have an exchange of views that is civil, in which there's some degree of common respect. And I think we got that in spades today. So once again, deep gratitude to the entire group that was here. We were averaging 100 type conversation, and the fact we had that big an audience and this kind of engagement and the quality of listeners, even at this moment, is so high. Idris Zaman, many thanks to you. Wendy Gilmore, Iqbal Thiba, Sami Yousafzai, Dr. Sakhavat, Shoaib Sharifi, who I noticed. Again, I could go through a lot of names, of course, Janan Musazai and Umber, to you. Many thanks to you. With that, we will close the room and look forward to feedback on the Tabadlab timeline. And thanks again, as always, Fawzia, Salim, Bilal, Arash, Saad, everyone that participated. Take care, everyone, and I apologize if I left anyone important out. I'm sure I did. But take me to task afterwards. Khuda Hafiz.